By declaring yesterday that the Constitution's ban on cruel and unusual punishment bars the execution of mentally retarded people, the Supreme Court injected a limited but wholly welcome measure of human decency into the nation's use of the death penalty. The 6-3 decision was a dramatic turnaround for a court that capitulated 13 years ago to a wave of pro-death penalty sentiment and found no reason to bar the execution of the mentally retarded. In so doing, it turned a blind eye to the obvious, that inflicting the death penalty on individuals with IQ scores of less than 70, who have little understanding of their moral culpability, violates civilized standards of justice. This time around, the court discovered a national consensus against executing retarded people that it could not find in 1989. Writing for the majority, Justice John Paul Stevens noted that mentally retarded criminals do not have the capacity to be deterred by the knowledge that they might be executed for a capital crime. He was joined by Justices Sandra Day O'Connor, Anthony Kennedy, David Souter, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Stephen Breyer. The majority correctly observed that the tide of public opinion had turned. Most states now either prohibit capital punishment altogether or ban its use against the mentally retarded. In an era in which DNA evidence has shown one death row inmate after another to be innocent of the crimes of which they were convicted, the polls demonstrate steadily dwindling public enthusiasm for capital punishment in general, and a widespread revulsion against the idea of executing mentally retarded people in particular. Justice Stevens also signaled that the question of what constitutes cruel and unusual punishment is not one that is answerable solely by coldly analyzing opinion polls and surveying state legislatures. It inevitably engages the moral sensibility of the individual justices. Indeed, the court had no business in the first instance relying so heavily on public sentiment when deciding an issue of life or death involving condemned murderers, a segment of the population that by definition is not held in particularly high esteem. 3 members of the court, Chief Justice William Rehnquist and Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas, joined in angry dissents. Justice Rehnquist was indignant on the matter of jurisprudence by opinion poll results, but ignored the fact that it was that very instinct to hew to what the public seemed to want that led the court into this moral swamp to begin with. The United States has been one of only 3 unions or nations, the other 2 are Japan and Kyrgyzstan, that permit the execution of the retarded. Dozens of retarded convicts, most of whom had little understanding of the moral implications of their deeds, have been put to death here since 1976. In the 20 states that still have laws on the books permitting the execution of retarded people convicted of capital offenses, it is estimated that there are scores, perhaps even hundreds, of inmates whose low IQs will now qualify them for a sentence reduction to life in prison. Landing at a moment of mounting disquiet across the political spectrum about the unfair and arbitrary workings of the nation's death penalty system, yesterday's ruling can only add momentum to current efforts underway on Capitol Hill and elsewhere to address some of the system's other lamentable flaws.